what you're seeing on your screen right now is the beginning of a branching activity. It has the ability to show you static items like you're seeing right now where there are no questions or any interactivity. It also has the ability to produce or show you video or audio. So you have a lot of different options in your branch. The traditional options are really going to be text and then a question. So you see here we're starting in an introduction, and after you've read this material you would hit your next button, and then you're going to get to your first question. Most of the branches that we have done in the past really only have 2 items that you can choose from. We are exploring the options of doing 3 or more items at this point, but that hasn't really been released. So we're kind of keeping it to 2 options. Usually the questions that are in between are multiple choice questions because it's asking you to choose one or something else. So that really lends itself best to a multiple choice as compared to something like a matching or some other kind of assessment. So in this case, I'm going to make a selection, and you can see I'll get a little check mark for my selection. And when I hit next, it's going to take me to a scenario or possibly another option that it has laid out here. And I would continue to go through this. Now, if I had chosen different options, I, of course, would get different branches. So if I went back to this question and chose this option instead of this option, this scenario would actually be a different scenario that I would be presented with. And that's why it's called branching, is that when you look down at the entire thing, it kind of looks like a tree root or branches that are stretching out. So as I continue to go through this, I will eventually get to the end. It will tell me what my total score is here. Depending on what my answers are to these questions, I will either be awarded points or I will not be awarded points. So there is the possibility that I might get to the end and be rewarded with no points. It's possible I might get partial credit depending on how I answered the questions, or it's possible that I might get 100% based on how I've answered those questions. The static items, such as the scenario and the introduction and the end, do not have any point values associated with them because there's nothing really for the user to do in those situations. It's really more of a read or interact with a video and then move on. So I'm going to start out with our blank template and kind of go through what each section means and what you should be filling out. But if at the end of this, I will show a completed template so you can see how the whole thing kind of comes together. So branching is an Excel file, and it has 4 different tabs at the bottom. We have 2 tabs that you will not want to go into and or delete, these control values and revision history. The 2 tabs that you need to concern yourself with are the Storyboard and Questions tab and the Branching Activities tab. The Storyboard and Questions tab is very much what it sounds like. At the top, you're going to storyboard what your branch will look like. So you'll start with your static item or introduction item here, and then go into your first branch. You do not need to go into your first branch. You could always go into another static item, which is an item that just kind of stands alone by itself that doesn't have a whole lot of interactivity. But eventually you will get to a branching item, in which case you will then create your branch and show which items you're going to continue to go to. And this will branch out further and further until such time that you have a full branch. I'm going to show an example now of what that looks like. So what you're seeing on the screen now is a version that has been completely filled out. You can see we start with the static item here and then go to an interactive assessment item, and then it branches out to these 2 items depending on which one you choose, and then goes into another branch, and so on and so forth. This can be easily created using Excel by either copying what's already in the template. So if I need a static item, I can always copy this static item here and drag it over here to the next item that I need. If I need to copy a branch, I can, of course, copy all of the items in the branch and copy that to get a brand new branch. You can also do this by using the shapes item at the top and selecting either the rectangle for your items or the connecting arrows if you need to. So you would continue to build out your branch so we can see the basic logic of what your branching will look like. Once you have done that, you will move down to this item section. And this item section is where you will fill out your questions. You can see you have here at the top a drop-down list which has a number of items. You will always start with item number 1. You then have the ability to put in media if you need media, or a question or static item if you need a question or a static item. So for media type, you have the options of either text or video. The media file path is not something you will fill out. That will be filled out by the Cengage side once the videos, if you have videos, are filled out. If there is a closed caption file path, again, if there's closed caption for the video, it would again be filled out by the Cengage internal teams. So if your media type is text, you would just start typing your text here. This is my first branch. And then I would move on to my second item. Because there's no pathway here, I don't need to fill out this bottom part. I can leave it blank, or I can leave it as item 1. Up here, I would want to select my next item, which would be item 2, which is actually the first place that I have interaction. Here, I would not fill out text here or any sort of media type or file path because this is not a static item. This is actually a question. So the question would be, do you choose A or B? And down here, my choices would be A and B. Now, my choices could be a lot more descriptive. They could be something like, this is choice 1, and this is choice 2. They can be long, they can be short. We normally don't recommend that you put a lot of text in here, only because the longer it gets, the more screen real estate you're taking up. But these should be simple choices that give people an option to go one way or another. Here you're able to put in an item number. So if this is where you're going to get 1 point for choosing choice A and 0 points for choosing choice B, you can do that. It's possible to actually give a point no matter which branch you choose if there's not a wrong answer. There's also a possibility to give more points for one branch over the other. So in this case, I get 1 point for choosing branch 1 and 2 points for choosing branch 2. Finally, the score, again, you would put in whatever score you would want here. Finally, you have your feedback section, and this is an optional section if you want feedback to appear for the choices. So if they choose choice 1 and you want textual feedback to appear, you can fill it out in this location. And in this case, when they answer the question, if they go back to it, they'll be able to see that because they chose choice 1, they're going to get the feedback that says this is the feedback for choice 1. You would continue then to go down to wherever you need to go next. Now, I did misspeak a little bit. I was talking about the score. The score should actually be in this column here, the score column. This item number column speaks to which branch you want to go to next. So in this case, we're going to keep it simple and have these be 3 and 4. So if I choose choice A, I'm going to go to item number 3. If I go to choice B, I'm going to go to item number 4. So up here, I would need to actually create items 3 and 4. So here's item 3, and here's item 4. Again, these could be static items with text. They could be a video of some sort. Let's say if I chose choice A, I go watch a video. If I choose choice B, I go look at some text that says this is the second branch. And then maybe item 5 could end up being my next choice. But how would they know to get from item 3 to item 5? Down here, your choices would be any, and the item number would be 5. The reason you don't need to do that at the very beginning is because you're always going to be going directly to item 2 from item 1. So again, anytime there's no choice, you're going to choose any for choices and make sure that you have an item number with which to go to. So this is the storyboard and question section. This section can be as long or as short as you want it to be, depending on what question items you want there to be out there. The next thing we're going to move on to is the branching activity section. So once you've filled out this tab, you would move on to your branching activity tab. So the Branching Activity tab is the tab where you're going to put a lot of your metadata to start out, and then you are also going to fill out some more basic information about the branch itself. The Storyboard and Questions tab is more to help people visualize what your branch is going to look like. Your Branching Activities tab is a lot about actually creating the XML behind the branching activity. So a lot of the information on this tab will help us to create the XML that is actually needed to run this item within the application. So you're going to start out with some real basic information. Most of this I'm not going to go through in great detail because it's pretty self-explanatory. You would put some sort of print ISBN here. If there is a title that this is associated with, you would put it in this location. This information here is, we say it's technically optional, but the more information we have here, the better in terms of items 7 through 1 here. So the author would be whoever the author of the title is, not the author of the branching activity, but the author of the title that this is meant to be associated with. The content development contact is whoever within Cengage is creating or having this created. So whoever internally you might be working with to have this created. The vendor name could be a single person or it could be an entire vendor, depending on how you want to fill that out. The creation date is the current date that you have created this product, and that's just so we have a reference if we ever need to go back and see if there's different versions. Down in number 8 is where we start to get into some functionality that we need filled out. So the possible activity score should be the score for the entire activity. This is required so that we know what the maximum amount of points you can get for any branch of this activity. So I'm going to put 10 here. This means that the possible activity score for the entire branching activity is 10. That means no matter which branch I go down, I can't get any more than 10 points. I can get less than 10 points, but I can't get any more than 10 points. Technically, if there's no score, then the possible activity score would actually be 0. We do have the ability to set within the application whether something is being taken for a grade or for practice. So, and that will override whatever we might actually have in the XML, but we do have to have some sort of possible score. We need a value here. So if there's no score at all, meaning that all of your branches will give you 0, then the possible score is 0. And then when they actually assign this within the application itself, they will have it as practice, and then there won't be any scoring that appears. Auto advance is a drop-down. It's either yes or no. Auto advance is basically if for static items, if there's a certain point at which you don't take any action, it will auto advance to the next option in the branch. Multi-take is basically, again, can this branching activity be taken multiple times? Next thing we're having here is grades and breadcrumb. This is discussed in the authoring information. This is essentially if you want to see the grades as you're going along as compared to just a score at the end. This, again, is a yes or no option. And then, again, all items have feedback. Whether each item is going to have feedback or not, again, this is usually reserved to the items that actually have a question as compared to the static items. And, again, you can say yes or no. The 2 items here in purple, again, are going to be internal to Cengage, so you do not need to worry about filling these out. The database and product code are items that your internal Cengage contact will fill out once those have been created. The next item here is our branching items, and this is basically sequential. We like to keep these in order if at all possible. You're just basically going to go down the list and populate as many branching items as you have, and a branching item is all of these. So each of these rectangles here counts as a branching item, and they should each have a unique number. And you can use the drop-down list to continue to go down all the way through 80 branches right at this point. If you need more, you can always contact Cengage and let us know, but 80 should definitely meet your needs. The item display name is what will display to the customer when they are actually taking the quiz. So as you can see, we're not seeing item 1, item 2 up here. We're seeing actual labels: introduction, question, scenario, question, and end. So if you know that you want those items to be displayed in such case, you would actually put things like introduction, question, 1, scenario, etc. And this is allowing you to name your items in a way that will display to the customer in a more friendly fashion. You can see that, again, we have a purple column here under item name. Item name is what we're going to name things on the back end of our system. So a lot of these questions and static items will actually be captured in a different place within our repository, and they will be given specific names that will then be called out by the overall activity to be displayed. So we will fill this column out. There's no need to fill anything out in this column when you're creating a branching activity. It's really more so that we can populate it here before we create that overall activity on our side. Again, possible score is the possible score that you can get at each point. So again, if our total possible score is 10, we would have to make sure that our branches, that at least one of our branches adds up to 10, and then other branches, depending on the value of each item, would add up to less than that. The thing to note is that anytime you have what we call a static item, which is an item where there is no interactivity, such as a question, so that would be this end, this scenario, or this introduction. Anytime there is no choice to be made, it's considered to be a static item. None of those items are allowed to have point values. So all of those items should have a possible score of 0. And the reason behind that is that it will throw off the grading if we have items that there is no interactivity having a score. Every question should have some sort of score. The scores can range from 1 to the maximum amount. Usually it's something like a 2 or a 3. And then you can continue on and have question 2, have this worth 3 points, continue to have another item, and so on and so forth. So again, they don't always need to go back and forth. You don't always need to have a static item and then a question. You could have 3 static items and then a question. You could have 2 questions in a row. It's really up to you as to how you want your branch to kind of span out. The item type is optional, but we do ask that you fill it in. It tells us whether you have a static image, a static text, or a static video. And again, this is only for static items. And again, static items are those items that have no interactivity. Okay, in the next section, you're actually going to get down to the logic of your branch. Some of it you've already worked out here on your storyboarding, but this is where we actually need this here. So your starting item is item 1. Your condition type is, again, a drop-down menu that has either any or choice. For your static items, you're going to want the condition to be any because there is no choice for you to make. Your condition value is, again, if you don't have any conditions, meaning that it's not a question, then you would not fill anything out here. If you do have an option for a choice, then you should have condition values, and the condition value should be something like equals A, oops, don't want that, or equals B. So this will say for item number 1, actually we're going to have a second item if we're doing a choice. So for item number 1 here, if I choose A or if I choose B, which item do I go to? So then I can go to item 2 or I could go to item 3. Now again, in the scenario that we've created over here, our first item would actually be a static item, so we wouldn't have any of this, and our choices would be any. So you would not have any condition values. You still need to tell the thing where to go. So you started at item 1, you next want to go to item 2. So once we get to branch 2, which is item 2, we would start at item 2. because we're here. Our condition type in this case would be choice. As we showed before, we're going to say A or B, and we'll make this item 3. This would be still item 2 because we're starting at item 2. So equals B, and then we can go to item 4. So you would continue to do this for each branch, for as many branches or boxes as you have in your storyboard. So every box in your storyboard needs to have an associated branch, and you would have one of two options within your branch, either this static item where the condition is any, or you would have a choice where your conditions are either going to be A or B, and you're going to tell it which one to go to based on where you're going. And you would just continue to fill this out until such time that you have completed your entire branch. So a completed template would look something like this. We have a storyboard here. We then have items with text in some of the options. Some of them have videos or images. Here you would select image for the type, and then you can put the name of the image here. It will get replaced with the full path once it's been loaded to our repository. But
okay, so you would attach the image and put that image file name there, maybe?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
You don't actually put the image itself into this Excel file. You would send the images in a separate zip file, but we have to know which image at this point to use. So we would ask that, again, if there's an image or a video, that you just put the name of it in here, and then eventually it'll get replaced with the full file path. So as you can see in this case, we've got lots of different options. This one's showing 3, but as I said, we're really testing with 2 right now, so this is more likely what you're going to see if you have questions. You can see that your branch can be very complicated in the sense that it can branch out quite far. You can have ending items all go to the same item, or they can all go to different items. And then within your branching activity itself, you should, again, fill out this information at the top. The purple information will be filled out by Cengage internal resources. And then you will have your display names, your items, hopefully in sequential order, your scores only for those items where there are questions, and then your types, and then eventually your branches as well, which will show you, again, which items you should be going to. So here, if I'm in item 2 and I choose A, I'm going to item 3, which is branch 3. If I choose B, I'm actually going all the way to branch 10. So this would pick up all the way back here. Depends just on how complicated you want your logic to be. For these multiple choice questions, we often will also ask you to fill out our multiple choice template, which is a Word template that can also be found where the branching template can be found. And that's just to ensure that we are capturing all of those in a single format for you so that we can refer to them later. I would highly recommend, if you need alt text, that you would talk with your Cengage contact, because that's not something that is currently always done with a lot of our assessments as of yet. We're just exploring that right now. So if you feel like you heavily need alt text within your options here for images, then you would have to talk to somebody internally about that. So if I wanted all my branches at the end to basically come together in one final box, all of my branches come together at the end here. Let's say item 5 was my final item. I could have both of the branches pointing to item 5, and that way, regardless of which you choose at the end, you're going to go to this item 5, which will be the end. Often that's not a scenario that people choose, because depending on how far the branch they get down, usually the end will talk about the consequences, may be the wrong word, but the outcome of the branches that you chose, and it'll be specified to the choices that you've made. But I have seen branching activities where, regardless of the choices you make, there is a final thought or a kind of roundup or summary that happens, and in that case you would just have all of your final branches, whether they're static items or a final choice, all pointing to the last item at the end. So that's pretty much everything about branching.